What's up, you guys? Rasathiat here in Singapore. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the Night Owl Podcast, as always. I'm so glad you guys joined me here. And I really love, really, from the bottom of my heart, love doing this. I didn't think I would get so addicted to creating a podcast, to, voicing my thoughts, just speaking out loud about the things that I've seen and heard and the things that I believe, just kind of discussing things with you guys. And I really appreciate your patience and I appreciate your support. It's been a pretty damn fantastic journey. And as always, the inspiration comes from all of you, from all of the media, the social media, TV, entertainment industry, music, just, everyday interactions. And I can't say more about that, honestly. It's because I finally opened up to a point where I can accept that I've made mistakes, accept that, hey, you know what, I saw this and it suddenly reminds me of this other instance that happened in my own life, and now I understand why things had to go down the way that they did. It's like more and more I get to peel back layers of myself and understand what it is that I went through, why I went through it, what was the lesson I was meant to learn, what was I supposed to realize about myself, and then the more I remember, the more I can teach you guys as well. So as I conquer my own journey, I'm teaching, and a lot of times it's as healing for me as it is for you. So I'm hoping that you continue with me on this journey as I continue evolving, continue picking up, inspiration, motivation, just encouragement along the way to fight for the life that you want, the kind of life that you want to create. So with that in mind, I'm still going back once again to the Netflix original based on Michelle Obama's book Becoming, because like I said, there were so many nuggets in there, and I knew it wasn't going to be. I can't sit here and talk for an hour. Y'all be so bored. But I figure I'd break it down into little concepts that I really think were relevant to my life, that were similar in some aspects, and maybe things that I didn't have growing up that I realized that she had that shaped her, but somehow I found a way to shape it for myself as well. So that's one of those concepts I wanted to bring up. So as you all know, I've been pretty plain about this. I moved around a lot. No, it wasn't an army brat situation at all, but I moved around a lot, mostly because my dad was looking for a fresh start, and that meant completely different town or a completely different country. And we just kind of, followed him around because he was, the man of the house. He was the one running things. So the concept of home to me is a very vague concept. It's more of a feeling than it is a specific place. And I think throughout my life, it has continued to change. It has been different places in the world. Home, your home address, when it's like a physical location, is where you're living at the time. But where I think of as like a home, like where I grew up, where I shaped most of myself, that's not a tangible, God, it's not a tangible place at all. I don't even know if that place exists anymore. For a long time, home was Whampoa Drive, here in Singapore, in the Boon Keng area, Whampoa area, a very old HDB area, an older division of housing, and it was the house my mom and dad, not my mom and dad, sorry, my mom and her brothers grew up in. It was the house I grew up in until I left when I was 5. It was the house that I came back to live in for a while until both grandparents finally passed on, but that was home for me. It was, small and simple, and life was far less complicated at the time. So when I was living in the US, I would think of, oh, home is, when I come back to Whampoa, when I come back to my grandparents' house, that feeling of these people know who I am. They know who I am. They've seen me grow up. They know where I came from. They know my story, and it's not the story, the bits and pieces that I've told to everybody else. They know the whole story. They've been there the whole time, watching as I make mistakes and fumble, screw up things, retaliate, rebel, and still come back to my roots. So this is the concept of home for the longest time. And it's actually where my compass pointed when I decided finally that, the life that I was trying to build with this man that I was married to, with our stepkids, with my kid, in the middle of in the middle of Hampton, right? We moved from the big bad news out to Hampton, and I felt like it was really important for me to get to a place where I could try and remember who I really was. Because in the process of this long relationship, it was about 8 years of living with this man and being with this man, away from my own family, away from friends that could really, tell me that I was maybe giving up too much of myself, that I completely lost sight of the person that I was. I had compromised on so many of my morals and my values. I had not stood up for myself at all. I was this shadow of my former self, cringing in a corner, afraid to stand up, afraid to face him full on and tell him what I really thought. It was a sheer mockery of this life that I had to until that point in time been pretty proud of. Actually, I felt pretty good about the things that I had accomplished in my life, and it wasn't a lot of things, but the things that I had done and finished, I felt pretty good about. I went through this phase of, okay, my mom told me this is success and I need to go through high school and I need to get a degree and I need to go get a job and then I need to find a man and settle down and then only then can I actually have kids and that would be okay. And that was the general order of things, and this is what success meant. And I did that. I did that to the best of my ability, and I was married to this man and I had this child and I had his children to take care of, and I felt pretty good about that. And success in his world meant that I had to get along with the baby mamas. I had to make sure that the kids could go see their families at big events. And a lot of times it wasn't always, Aaliyah's family. It was more Aaron's family, little Aaron's family. And luckily for me, they were accepting and warm enough to allow me to come in as this stranger, right? And bring the other child from another relationship into their family. And we started, I started bonding. I started building this family, this idea, this concept of home. And home for me in the US, when I was in Hampton with him, home for me was, it was a 2-story house with, 4 bedrooms and 2.5 baths and a yard and a trampoline and, a cul-de-sac and a school we could walk to, high school, middle school, elementary school, all of that. And it was a big ass tree at Christmas with lots of presents and, me staying up till past midnight to wrap all the presents and present them underneath the tree like Santa had come. And we did cookies the night before and we decorated the Christmas tree on Thanksgiving, like all those little traditions that we did. Breakfast on Christmas morning was this big brunch thing, and I made sure that they waited and waited and waited until they couldn't handle it anymore, and then okay, go open the presents. And it was traditions that I had built. But in the course of all of that, I had forgotten my own culture, and I had to put all of my wants and needs and dreams on a back burner because suddenly I had a husband to take care of and I had kids to, nurture their dreams and make sure they were doing well in school. And I had to work 80 hours a week to make sure that I could make ends meet on my end and I could provide the things that I was supposed to provide as a mom, as a step parent, as a wife, and I got so lost in all of that. I got caught up in the idea that he wanted to create this gym, and he wanted to build this business and he wanted to flip cars and he wanted to do concerts. And I did everything I could to make sure that I lined up those things for him, or at least I wasn't in the way. I didn't want to be the one that's told him he couldn't do this stuff because for whatever reason. And so I wrapped myself in their dreams and tried to make sure that I was the best provider possible. I was the muse that they needed to continue fighting for the dreams. I was the backbone that kind of created a solid foundation on where their education was concerned, so they wouldn't be told no because they didn't have what it took to get to the next level of school or whatever. So it was football for little Aaron, and it was Aaliyah wanted to be a part of something bigger, and she was trying really hard to discover who she was and what she was made of. And so I did the best I could. But when I finally had enough and I couldn't stay crouched in a corner any longer, I was like, I need to come home. I need to go back to that place where people know me and people have known me from the beginning. I desperately, in all of my psychological education, just trying to find out why people do what they do and where they come from, where they start. I realized that your personality is basically formed from 0 to 5. And I was thinking, God, who would know that about me? Who would remember that about me so they can help me remember my song, help sing it back to me, help me remember who I'd completely lost sight of. And so I left with my tail tucked between my legs and a toddler in my arms, and I flew home for the first time in forever. And when I got home, it was hard again because I was depending on everyone's memory of me when I was young, because I'd been gone for 30 years. And I was hoping that because I wasn't here in between, they really had a solid idea of a memory of who I was up until the age of 5. And as I talked to my uncles, it seemed like people had kind of moved on and there wasn't a lot of space for who I was now to be able to reintegrate myself into the family and to find my space and to understand, what it would take for me to start life all over again. And they were They were very Singaporean in their idea of, you need to get a job, and you need to do this, and you need to start providing for your family. You can't, you can't depend on your mom. You can't put all that weight on her. That's not fair. And I get that. To a degree, I get that because they wanted to protect her as well. But for me, who was struggling to find solid footing, trying really hard to rebuild this idea of who I thought I was out of this shell of a woman I had become, it was really hard. And a lot of times I didn't get the answers I was looking for. I was able to find shelter with my grandparents for a little while. And I was lucky that my daughter had my grandparents around for a while as well to kind of get an idea of the culture. So going back to, doing things in the temple and getting together for pujas and abhishekams and, the first Saturday celebrations, feeding the temple, like all of those things. It was a really big change for me because I went a good 20 years in the United States without that. I didn't have temples out there. I didn't have cultural things that we did or celebrated big. Like Christmas was big, but it was Christian. We didn't have Deepavali celebrations where you went out and got new clothes. We didn't do Tamil New Year the way they do Tamil New Year here. We didn't do any of that stuff. So it was hard for me to reintegrate and remember all of those things. It was beautiful. Trust me, it was very, very fulfilling. But it was hard because I didn't know where my place was. I didn't know what was appropriate, what wasn't. And so I came home and I was happy to be in a place where some people remembered, some people didn't. My mom doesn't have a lot of memories of me as a child, so she couldn't remember what kind of kid I was and my aspirations or my dreams as a kid. And my uncles didn't remember either, and they were very busy. They had their own lives, their own families, their own grandchildren they were looking after. So it was up to me to kind of rediscover myself. And where at first I thought home was Whampoa Drive, what I realize now is home is actually a different idea. Home is actually Yogaville. Yogaville is an ashram in the middle of the US. And looking back now, because I guess maybe it's because my grandparents are no longer with us, home has kind of shifted to the next place that I know that people really know who I am. They saw me grow up. All the swamis that we interacted with, all of the ashramites, us yoga villains, as we used to call ourselves, all the girls that used to come from all over the country and all over the world to attend dance camp, my aunt, my grandmother who's still alive and kicking ass, she's 102 this year. Those are the people now that I look to help me remember who I am, and it's those people who encourage me to speak up and to live the life that Swamiji taught us about, and to be true to myself. So for me, home is not one specific place. It's kind of a cross between Yogaville and Whampoa Drive. It's a cross between the person I was as a teenager and the child I was growing up here in Singapore. And it's been a hard journey to remember all of those pieces of myself, to remember the things that I had quietly pushed or shoved to the side because it wasn't relevant at the time in my life. I couldn't allow that version of me to speak up or stand out because it maybe took the spotlight away from somebody else. Made someone feel uncomfortable with, their own accomplishments. And it was never my intention to hurt anyone, but I was just trying to find my own sure footing. So the fact that Michelle Obama, in her story of becoming who she is now, she took us through this memory lane, storyline of who she was as a child, who she was because of her parents. She came from this solid foundation, this one childhood home that still exists. It hasn't been demolished. It's not taken over by somebody else. It's still there. And she can take you through who she was, what was important to her, and all of those things. I thought it was really beautiful that she was able to use that idea of who she was so that she would always remember where she came from. She had this idea of who she was supposed to be, and it was based in that one solid childhood memory of home. For me, it was very different, and for you, it will be very different as well. I don't know what your story is. I don't know where you come from, but wherever those memories are that remind you of who you truly are, the potential that you have within yourself, the things that used to make you happy as a child, those are the things that are really, really important to us as we look back as adults. So many things will tell us we can't do this and you can't be like that and you have to adjust and you have to accommodate, you have to compromise. But it's in those small compromises, and a lot of them are small everyday compromises, that you tend to lose who you really are. That's where midlife crises come from. That's where frustration to the point of anxiety and depression come from. That's where all of your major life calamities kind of come to a screeching halt, because somewhere along the line you said, okay, never mind, it's all right. I'll put myself to the side. Okay, never mind. My dreams aren't really important. I got to support this other person right now. And it's those moments that you suddenly realize, you know what? I have been compromising. I have been putting myself on a back burner. There has been not a lot of space that I've allowed myself for self-love or self-help. And it's in those moments that you want to reach back for a memory like home, for a memory like family. When was the last time you were around somebody who loved you so unconditionally that you knew, even if you stumble and fall, they were going to be there, so you weren't scared to stumble and fall. You weren't scared to put out that first step into the unknown and then another step after that. A lot changes in your life when you realize that failing is a part of the process, and you realize that no matter what, there will be one or two people that will stand behind you, and that's actually all you need. There is nothing worse than feeling like there is no one behind you. There's no one that believes in you. There's no one that understands what you're going through. And even if they don't understand, they don't want to stand by and watch. They don't want to stand by and understand or try to understand. There's nothing worse than that feeling, and I've done that for so many years. I think I've done that for a good 16 years of my life. Unknowingly, unwittingly, I allowed people to drive me away from the people that loved me most. And as I'm trying to make my way back towards them and trying to be this idea of strength and unconditional love for my daughter, I'm realizing just how many people have varied backgrounds, varied ideas of home, varied memories, or maybe a lack of memory of something stable in their life, something that was really and truly good, without a string attached, without, conditions of any sort, something that they could really hold on to and kind of build from. So as you look at the end of COVID and you start looking at this new normal we're about to embrace and try and live a better life, because we've seen what it's like without, all of a sudden, without the ability to make choices for ourselves about where we go, what we do, who we're with, where we have to really pay attention to our health, because immunity is everything at the moment, especially in a time where you can't see symptoms and you can't tell by looking at people who is susceptible and who's not. I think it's really important for you to consider what the new normal might be and find a way to build yourself based on memories of when you were truly happiest. What made you happy? What made you proud of yourself? What made you feel unstoppable and invincible and just really excited about life? Because it's those moments that you're going to use to piece your life together, to rebuild once again. After an event like COVID, a worldwide phenomenon that really scared the hell out of everybody. And some people, it didn't scare so much, but the point being that it's not going to be normal ever again. Whatever happens after this, as the quarantine slowly lifts, it's not ever going to be the normal that we've known before. We're going to have to build from somewhere different. And the fact that you get to start over is a beautiful thing in and of itself. So I would love for you guys to look at the things that really lit you up. What did you do during quarantine that gave you peace? What did you do during quarantine that allowed you to just laugh with abandon, just to really belly laugh and enjoy yourselves, and the small things that made you light up for a while? What were those things, and how can you do more of those things going forward? And that's why I wanted to talk about home right now. What makes you feel at home in your body? What makes you feel at home in your mind? What makes your heart light up? What makes you smile for no reason at all? And I'm really hoping it's not lodged in someone else, but it's lodged in things you did for yourself, just for yourself, without expectations from anyone else, without conditions from anyone else, things you did just for yourself. And how can you integrate more of those things in your life going forward? So if you have any questions or concerns, about the podcast and what the subject matter was for today, please drop them in the comments below. I do want to hear from you. If you have questions about how to recall some of those things, or how to discover for yourself the things that you think are truly actions that bring you joy and happiness, you're more than welcome to drop me a line and let's see if we can schedule a call. But more than that, I want you to remember for yourself. And if you don't remember very well, if your memory isn't what it used to be, please write them down as you remember. Write them down in a specific place so you can always go back and refer to them. Because it's those things you need more of in your life so you can find more excuses to be happy, to be yourself. There are plenty of excuses out there for why you can't be all of who you are all the time. There's plenty of, reasons for why you need to reduce your volume or not laugh so often or be quiet and just not be heard or not be seen. There's plenty of those. But what we really need is more excuses to expand and be ourselves. So on that note, you guys, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. If you have questions, like I said, drop me a line. But please learn to enjoy your life and really thrive, because what's the use of life otherwise? I love you guys. Bye.